NASCAR has confiscated tires from Team Penske and RFK. Chase Elliott has signed a 5-year contract extension with Hendrick Motorsports, and it looks like Andretti is forming a Formula One team. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. If you got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories to discuss here today on the channel, let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead and start off with the paint schemes and sponsorship news first. Let's jump into those very quickly. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kevin Harvick's 2022 Subway scheme that we're going to see in multiple races in 2022. I love this paint scheme a lot. I love the color variations, line up the numbers in a really good position. I think did a really great job on it. It's a very solid paint scheme, and I'm looking forward to seeing it on the racetrack in 2022 as well. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeff Burton's 2022 Arrowhead brass scheme that we're going to see this weekend, I believe, at Auto Club. I like this paint scheme a lot. Did a really great job on it. I think it's a nice looking paint scheme with the color variations. They did a good job on it, and I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack in 2022. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is BJ McLeod's 2022 Palo Casino scheme that we're going to see in multiple races in 2022. This paint scheme's all right in my honest opinion. It's not my favorite paint scheme I've seen, but the number's actually in a really good position, which isn't the end of the world. In my opinion, it's a decent looking paint scheme, and I'm looking forward to seeing it on racetrack in 2022 as well. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Seek's 2022 All-American Pools and Spa scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Auto Club. Overall, paint scheme's all right in my honest opinion. I love the colors on it. They did a good job on it. It's an all right paint scheme, and I'm looking forward to seeing it on the racetrack in 2022 as well. The next paint scheme we are taking a look at is Todd Gilliland's 2022 Frontline Enterprises scheme that we're going to see in all 3 races for the West Coast Swing. This paint scheme's all right in my honest opinion. I'm not a big fan of the color that it has on the cars. I don't like the red and the black contrast as much as they do the gray. It doesn't really work for me in my opinion. And the number's not in as good a position as I'd like it to be. But we're going to have to deal with this car for a couple weeks. Hopefully we'll get some good runs with this car for Todd Gilliland. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Josh Berry's 2022 PUBG Mobile scheme that we're going to see in a couple races in 2022. I like this paint scheme a lot. This color is very wacky when it comes to the colors, but it's an alright look. It's actually a nice looking paint scheme in my opinion, and I'm looking forward to seeing it on the racetrack in 2022 as well. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2022 Honey Nut Cheerio scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Auto Club. This paint scheme is really nice. One of my favorite JCG Doherty paint schemes I think I've ever seen. Colors in a good position, numbers in a great position. I love everything about this, and I'm happy to see that this paint scheme is going to be showing at Auto Club this weekend, to be honest with you. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Joey Logano's 2022 Auto Trader scheme that we're seeing this weekend at Auto Club. It's pretty cool to see the Auto Trader stepping up to the plate, and they're sponsoring Joey Logano this year. I don't think they've sponsored Joey Logano really that much in the past. They've think it's sponsored once or twice, but they don't usually sponsor Joey Logano that much. So I think that's pretty cool. Numbers in a good position. Colors look great, and I'm happy to see this car will be on the racetrack as well. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Cindric's 2022 Auto Trader scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Auto Club. The defending Daytona 500 winner this week's Daytona 500 will now be able to drive this nice Auto Trader car. Looks nice, numbers in a great position, very happy about it, and I'm glad to see you will see his paint scheme out on the racetrack. I think it's a nice looking paint scheme. I'm really excited to see this on the racetrack in 2022 as well. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brett Moffitt's 2022 half-off wholesale scheme that we are going to see this weekend at Auto Club Speedway. Overall, I think it's a nice looking paint scheme. They did really solid and a really good job on it. And hopefully we'll see some good runs out of this. And we're looking forward to see this car out on the racetrack this weekend here at Auto Club Speedway. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bimbo Bakeries. As it was announced on Saturday that Bimbo Bakeries is going to be returning to JTG Doherty Racing in 2022. They will be sponsored, their intimate sponsorship at Nashville. They will have Atlanta, they'll have Ballpark Buns, and then they'll have Thomas Bagels at Bristol Motor Speedway. Bimbo Bakery sponsored JT Doherty Racing last year. I don't think they sponsored in 2020, but I think they're part of that Kroger branding, so no surprise that Kroger had association with that. Overall, I think that it's really awesome to see that Bimbo Bakeries is coming back to once again work with the team in 2022, and that's good on the sponsorship front, and good to see that they are back sponsoring in 2022 as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Pristine Auctions. As Pristine Auctions has announced partnerships with multiple drivers for 2022, including Kevin Harvick, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Kyle Larson. They've already announced sponsorship with Christopher Bell, but they will have partnership with all three of these drivers in the future. Kyle Larson is also part of another group, but I think it's really cool to see that Pristine Auctions is continuing working more drivers. I would expect they're probably going to have more drivers that are going to be involved from other respective series. Overall, in my opinion, I think this is really, really cool. I'm glad to see Pristine Auctions is coming in and working with them in 2022. I think it's really, really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some sponsorship activations that took place at Daytona over the weekend. So, at Daytona International Speedway, you have the Roof-On Mortgage had a Victory Lane activation at Daytona International Speedway. Of course, Roof Mortgage is basically the partner and sponsor for Victory Lane in NASCAR. 3Chi was selling Delta 8 products. Again, 3Chi, I think, is a weed company, so they were selling Delta 8 products. NASCAR Black History Month was featured at there, and Columbia and Kitty Cat Coin had their own booths as well. One of the things that I've been saying for a long time is if you want basically NASCAR fans to really be engaged, these sponsors have to be really engaged with the fans. And in my honest and sincere opinion, what they did here at Daytona, I think is a major, major step in the right direction. I think that they did an absolute and a really, really solid job on it. And I think that's a great decision that they decided to go ahead and do more sponsorship activation. And they need to continue doing that for the future sport. I think that's a thumbs up in my honest opinion. I'm glad to see that they continue to work in that front, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Hendrick Motorsports. As according to Adam Stern, Hendrick Motorsports says its merchandise sales from this past weekend were up 40% from 2019 and 2020, despite it being a shorter speed weeks this year. This year's Daytona 500, there were more people at the Daytona 500 than there have been in many, many years. And you look at the merchandise sales for many, many teams, including for Hendrick Motorsports, how much merchandise they were able to sell. The fact that they were up 40%, I think is a major thumbs up and a major step in the right direction for NASCAR in the future. Overall, I think this is really, really awesome and really, really great. And I'm glad to see that Hendrick Motorsports' sales and merchandise sales were up in a major way. And I think a lot of it, of course, helps that Kyle Larson become really, really popular. And other drivers have become really, really popular as well, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Resin Compound. As was announced today on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, the NASCAR is going to put resin down and use tire dragons at Auto Club for this weekend, since track is still idle for 2 years. You want to know my opinion on this? I think it's absolutely stupid that they're adding Resin Compound to Auto Club Speedway. I don't care if this track has been set idle for 2 years. This is one of the last tracks, in my opinion, that you need to add Resin Compound. At least it's not PJ1, which I think is a major step. At least they're using Resin Compound from National, which is better. But still, you do not need to add Resin Compound to this track. I don't get why they're doing this. I think Resin Compound is one of the stupidest things that they need to add. They don't need to add it. I think it's really dumb that they're going ahead and adding it. And again, this is one of the last tracks, in my honest and sincere opinion, that needs Resin Compound. I think it's a really dumb decision. I get why they're doing it, because they haven't had the track in a couple of years. But at the same time, you don't need Resin Compound at this track. Come on, NASCAR. This is one of the last few tracks. And of course, if the race is not good, people are going to blame the next gen car. But in my opinion, people need to blame NASCAR for making a stupid decision instead of blaming the track and basically the car for that. So in my opinion, I think it's a dumb decision that NASCAR made, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Tim Veens. As during the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series race, I don't think I've ever seen this before, but Tim Veens, who owns Glory to God Racing, he proposed during the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series race to his long-term girlfriend. I saw a lot of people making jokes about Tim Veens because of what he's been involved with and stuff. But at the same time, I think it's really cool to see that Tim Veens was able to propose his girlfriend. Congratulations to Tim Veens, and I wish their family the best of luck. And major congratulations to Tim Veens on basically being able to be engaged to his long-term girlfriend. Huge congratulations on that, and I'm really happy to see that they were able to have that happen. I'm really happy to see that for Tim Veens. Congratulations, Tim, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some celebrities that were at the Daytona 500. There were a lot of major celebrities that were there. One of them that was there was Barney Viscero on Furniture Row Racing. He was there at the Daytona 500. You also have Carlos Slim, who basically, is a restaurant company that sponsors, I believe, Daniel Suarez and Chico Perez as well. He was at the track. You have Floyd Mayweather, who owns the Money Team, that was making their debut. He was at the racetrack. And Brian Vickers, who's not been spotted at a racetrack in, I think, 5 or 6 years due to a certain situation going on. Most celebrities were out at the racetrack. You think about the Daytona 500 and how many celebrities that were really mentioned on broadcast that it came a track. You can get so many people that you never thought were going to show up. Also, Kid Rock was there as well, by the way. you had a lot of peeps, big celebrities that were showing up, and the atmosphere around Daytona National Speedway this year, I think, was absolutely incredible. So, in my honest and sincere opinion, I think that that is a major thumbs up, and the fact that they were able to have so many of those celebrities there was really, really great, and I'm glad to see we got to see a lot of celebrities at the track, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jimmy Means. Now, Jimmy Means, of course, is basically the owner of Jimmy Means Racing, but he's actually also going to be spotting for Harrison Rhodes this weekend at Auto Club Speedway. This is really, really cool to see that you're going to have the owner of the team going to be spotting for Harrison Rhodes, who's making his second start of the 2022 season with Jimmy Means Racing. I think Jimmy Means, I'm not sure how much spotting experience Jimmy Means has, so I'm not sure how he's going to do. But I do think that racing experience that Jimmy Means does have, I think is really going to be able to help out Harrison Rhodes. So hopefully Jimmy Means can do a really good job, and hopefully we'll see some good things from Jimmy Means as a spotter for Harrison Rhodes this weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Joe Graf Jr. As Joe Graf Jr. is going to be driving a 08 for SS Greenlight Racing this weekend at Auto Club. Now, Joe Graf Jr., of course, driving full-time for SS Greenlight Racing, but I think there's going to be sometimes we're going to see multiple drivers in different cars. Joe Graf Jr., I'm not sure how he's going to do this weekend. Didn't really have a good run at Daytona. I think they had engine problems and unfortunately fouled the race early. They did lead a lap at Daytona by staying out to get some strategy stuff done. But I'm not sure how well he's going to do. They do have SHR equipment, so hopefully Joe Graf Jr. can have a good weekend. Hopefully he's able to qualify him for the event as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Timmy Hill. As Timmy Hill is going to drive the 38 for RSS Racing this weekend at Auto Club. Timmy Hill has probably got his best opportunity I think he's ever had in his career. Because RSS Racing is a team that I think is actually a pretty decent organization. And they are getting a much tighter alliance with Stewart Haas Racing. Timmy Hill, in my opinion, is a very, very talented racer. And in my sincere and honest opinion, I think he absolutely 100% deserves this opportunity to drive this car. I think he's going to do really, really good in this car. I think easily he will be able to qualify in. And I would not be shocked if Timmy Hill comes out of this race with a potential top 15 or even the top 10 this weekend. I know those high expectations, but I think he's got a really good shot to make it into the show. And I think that Timmy Hill will have a really strong run at Auto Club this weekend, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cole Custer. As Cole Custer is going to be driving a 07 for SS Greenlight Racing this weekend at Auto Club. Of course, Cole Custer currently drives full-time in the Cup Series for the 41 for Stewart Haas Racing, but he's making his first start in Xfinity Series since last time he raced, I believe, at Daytona. This will be his first start of the year. I think he's making 1 or 2 starts this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Cole Custer is looking to try to improve his craft and trying to get some more experience for going into the Cup Series weekend. Overall, my expectations, I do think that Stewart Haas is going to have more work on that car. They're probably going to make that car a lot faster. And I think that with the experience Cole Custer has, I think he'll have some pretty strong runs, and I think he'll do pretty good. So hopefully we'll see a really strong run from Cole Custer this weekend, and I hope he does a really good job, and hopefully we'll see him have a great run this weekend here at Auto Club Speedway. Hopefully he'll do great in the 07 car. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about lgbcoinio. As during the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, before the race began, there was a plane that was flying over with Let's Go Brandon over the racetrack. This is supported by Adam Stern. That a plane carrying Let's Go Brandon was flying over the racetrack with lgbcoin.io. I thought this team didn't have enough. I thought the sponsor did not have enough money, and I thought this coin really had kind of fallen through. I guess not, considering the fact they were able to sponsor a plane and bring a banner over. In my opinion, I think everyone knows what LGB means, and we already know that the coin basically fell through and lost a lot of its value, and it lost a lot of its product, and it lost a lot of its money. So I'm definitely surprised. I know that they gave a lot of sponsorship over to Brandon Brown, but at the same time, I'm definitely really shocked and really surprised that they were able to have a plane. And at the same time, we know what that means. It means a slander against the president, even though I'm not a big fan of the president. But in my opinion, I think it's definitely interesting that they decided to go ahead and bring the plane over to Daytona. But it shouldn't be a major surprise, considering it's Daytona, it's in Florida. People act crazy, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Indianapolis Motor Speedway. As this is reported by Adam Stern, that Indianapolis Motor Speedway is expecting a crowd in the 300,000 range for this year's Indianapolis 500. That is majorly huge. I don't know what the largest crowd the Indianapolis has ever held. I think it's over 200. I think I don't know if they've ever had a crowd that large in years. So they've had a crowd of 350,000 to 400,000. But the fact that they're potentially going to have 300,000 fans show up at Indianapolis Motor Speedway is absolutely going to be huge. Indianapolis 500, of course, is one of the biggest motor races, if not the biggest motor race in the United States, and one of the biggest motor races around the world. And everybody wants to win the Indianapolis 500. And I think that the Indianapolis 500, especially over the last couple of years, has been rejuvenated with the fact that you see a lot of big celebrities go out to the event. And of course, it's on Memorial Day, which is a very, very successful for the sport. So I think it's cool to see the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is going to have 300,000 people that are going to show up. And hopefully the event is going to do very well. Hopefully we'll see some great racing at Indianapolis Motor Speedway as well, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Parker Kligerman. As Kligerman said after having a very strong run at Daytona International Speedway, says that he wants to do this until that they take the wheel from me and I can no longer hobble in a damn truck. By the way, like I mentioned, he got a top 5 at Daytona International Speedway. I basically want to see Parker Kligerman in a top right, in my opinion. And remember last year, he originally was supposed to drive for Rich Schultz Racing in this season, but unfortunately the deal fell through. This year's driving for 10 or 12 races with Henderson Racing, and it seems like even though they don't run the full season, Henderson Racing tends to bring a lot of pace and a lot of speed to the racetrack, and they tend to have really, really fast trucks. And I think at this team, because they want to have a chance to win, they're going for more wins instead of trying to go out there and run every single race. They're trying to go out there and win more races. In my opinion, I want to see Parker Kligerman in a top right. He absolutely deserves it. He's done incredible throughout his career. And I do hope and pray that we see Parker Kligerman get a top tier ride in the future. But it was cool to see that he got a top 5. And in my opinion, he deserved that awesome and badass run, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Johnny Sauter. As Johnny Sauter's first race is expected for Thorstert to be at Martinsville. This is according to Phil Parsons on the broadcast. He says that Johnny Sauter's first race is likely going to be at Martinsville. Of course, Johnny Sauter is running a majority of races this year with Glory to God Racing, but he will also be driving around 6 to 8 races with ThorSport this season. Johnny Sauter's season, he's probably going to have a much more struggling year because Glory to God Racing is a slower team. But Johnny Sauter, of course, is going to drive the 13 truck on a part-time basis. In my opinion, my expectations for Johnny Sauter are really not through the roof when he drives for ThorSport now, just because of the fact that he really has not done that much in the Cup Series, in the NASCAR Truck Series the last couple of years. He's kind of fallen off, and I don't know how much longer Johnny Sauter is going to race. That being said, though, I do hope that Johnny Sauter does have a really good run with ThorSport Racing, as I think it'd be awesome, and hopefully we'll see Johnny Sauter have some good runs for ThorSport this year, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Nick Sanchez. As Nick Sanchez said during an ARCA broadcast that his first race for BJ Motorsports will take place at Phoenix later this year in the number 5 car. Of course, Nick Sanchez was announced last year after winning the ARCA race at Kansas that he'd be driving part-time for BJ Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Nick Sanchez is a very, very talented driver in the ARCA Series, and he's someone that, of course, picked up his first ARCA win at Kansas, and someone that I think is going to be a championship contender. And who could win the championship? Of course, drive for Rev Racing on a full-time basis. I think he's got a good shot to winning the championship. Now, when I look at his opportunity to potentially win the Xfinity Series race, he's probably not going to win. BJ Motorsports is not winning equipment. But I do think that BJ Motorsports this year is drastically going to improve. They had really fast qualifying pace, and I do think that this year they're going to be a much better organization when it comes to their speed. So I think that Nick Sanchez has a really good opportunity here, and I do really hope that we could see Nick Sanchez continue to improve and have some really, really strong runs here in 2022. Hopefully we'll see him do good. I really hope he can have some good runs here in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the Money Team Racing. This is reported by Adam Stern on Friday afternoon that the Money Team Racing is now eyeing Circuit of the Americas as its next race to enter Graf. The Money Team this year is planning to run around 15, 18 races this year. They're going to have a schedule very similar to College Racing, where they're probably going to run all the road courses and probably all the super speedways, and maybe a couple other races as well. The Money Team made their debut at Daytona after making the Daytona 500, and despite having a tire get loose and a wheel come off, which means that the crew chief, Wayne Automac, I think that's what the crew chief is, Tony Eury Jr. most likely is going to get suspended for 4 races. They will look like the entering at Circuit of the Americas after finishing 26th. This team probably is not going to be very, very fast when they go to Circuit of the Americas unless Casgrove can perform, which again, Casgrove is a really, really strong road course racer. And this team, of course, I think in the future is going to go full time. But I do think that Casgrove does have a good chance to perform pretty well. And I do hope that Casgrove could come into this ride, do really well Circuit Americas. I hope they perform very, very well. And I hope that we could see Casgrove do extremely well at Circuit Americas. I think it'd be great, and hopefully we'll see them do well. It's good to see the money team is going to enter more races in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Joey Logano. Now, after the duels took place, we all saw on the last lap that Joey Logano got involved in a massive accident where his car got a ton of damage and he had to go to a backup car. Well, according to reports, the damaged car that Joey Logano had is back at the shop and will probably be back next week at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, which is definitely crazy considering the fact back in the day when you think about these cars. Remember, these cars are not basically built from sheet metal. They're now basically assembled parts. And you can actually get these parts, but of course we know currently at the moment that there's a massive shortage of parts currently at the moment in NASCAR Cup Series due to the next-gen car issues. We've seen a couple big wrecks, especially at Daytona, where we could see major part shortage problems come up in the near future. But it's interesting to me that Joey Logano is saying that basically saying that they're going to have that car ready for Vegas. And I think that's absolutely crazy and insane. And the fact that they've got that car and they're already working on it and potentially have back in Vegas, I think it's crazy and it's pretty insane, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Austin Cindric. Now, of course, Austin Cindric picked up his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory by winning the 2022 Daytona 500. And he says that he doesn't think his Daytona 500 winning car will race again, but rather go into the Team Penske Museum in Phoenix. Now, remember, for the first time in many, many years, NASCAR is not taking the Daytona 500 winning car. They instead are giving it back to the team so they can run later in the year due to the parts shortage. Well, it looks like that Austin are going to team decided that they're not going to use it anyways after this year, and they're going to try to get another car for later this year to run another extra car this year so that they can run another car. In my honest and standing opinion, I think it's definitely interesting that they've decided to go ahead and not use this car after the Daytona 500. Considering, again, with the power shortage problem, you think they would go ahead and use it. But in my honest opinion, I don't blame them for deciding to go ahead and do this because I think it's interesting that they've decided to go ahead and do this. So maybe we'll see his car run later. But again, they're putting it basically putting it in their museum in Phoenix. Again, they do have a museum in Phoenix. Definitely interesting for sure, and maybe we'll see them get another car here in the future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Drew Dollar versus Jeremy Clements. Now, Jeremy Clements was not very happy with Drew Dollar. Very early in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, I think on lap number 14 of the race, we saw a couple cars wreck down the backstretch where Drew Dollar got very, very loose and overcorrected back up into the outside wall, and Jeremy Clements got collected in the wreck. Jeremy Clements was not very happy, especially during his post-race interview, and he took to Twitter later in the evening. He says, that's what happens when you have guys that buy rights that shouldn't be out there. And I have to 100% understand Jeremy Clements' frustration. I 100% agree with him. Jeremy Clements has a very, very small team and a driver that has really worked very, very hard to get where he is at. And let's talk about Drew Dollar for a second. I do not understand why Drew Dollar got to race in the Xfinity Series. I get he's a decent super speed racer, but he wrecked both cars that he drove. He wrecked the car in the ARC race, albeit it really wasn't his fault what happened in the ARC race, but he wrecked in the same spot in the ARC race as he did in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race. And I get, again, frustration for Jeremy Clements because they don't have a lot of cars and they're a small team that's really trying to survive out there. So I 100% understand the frustration that that Jeremy Clements has. Again, they don't have a lot of cars right now, and they're trying to basically make it through the year. So I 100% understand the frustration he has. In my honest opinion, I get the frustration, and I really understand it, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bubba Wallace. Now, today, as of right now, remember that Netflix documentary talked about? Well, the Netflix documentary has officially gone live on February 22nd, 2022. I believe it's a 4 or 5 mini-sode series that's currently up on Netflix, that Netflix documentary. This Netflix documentary is going to go around Bubba Wallace in 2311 racing. Mainly is going to be focusing on Bubba Wallace, but also focus a lot on 2311 racing with the additions of Kurt Busch. And this will be basically a series that you're going to be seeing here on Netflix. what this series could do, in my opinion, could be really, really huge for the sport. I think that having a Netflix documentary like this could be very, very massive for the growth of the sport. You look at the Drive for Survive series, how successful that has been, how much Formula One has really, really grown off of that, and major things. And look at the American audience. We are seeing ratings for American audiences get into the millions, and I think that's a major, major step in my opinion, and I think that's a good thing, and I think that NASCAR really could have those same effects by that as well. So, in my opinion, I think that's the hope of this documentary as well. I've not watched it yet, but I'm definitely going to try to check it out here in the future. And in my opinion, I think it's a great decision. And hopefully, I think it's going to be a good documentary. I hope people have enjoyed that documentary as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Brad Keselowski versus multiple drivers. Now, if you watch the Daytona 500, Brad Keselowski was really, really aggressive. It was making a lot of mistakes and causing a lot of wrecks. And many drivers were not very happy with Brad Keselowski. Harrison Burton, during his interview, basically during his interview after getting wrecked out with, I think, 2 or 3 laps to go in stage number 1, Harrison Burton says, "You cannot push right, Brad." And basically, Harrison Burton crashed. He ended up flipping upside down and taking out a ton of drivers, including Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Kyle Busch got a ton of damage, Ross Chastain, Alex Bowman, and Kurt Busch also got damaged in that as well. Denny Hamlin also was not very happy with him. He says that Brad Keselowski was way over aggressive in the race as well. Of course, Denny Hamlin has the right to be upset concerning the fact that Denny Hamlin got taken out of the wreck. And then later in the race, we saw Ricky Stenhouse Jr. get turned by Brad Keselowski with around 10 laps to go with the bumper not locked up. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was very, very critical of Brad Keselowski in the race. And we saw other drivers really not happy with Brad Keselowski as well. Like I said about Brad Keselowski was super, super aggressive. And I think a lot of it is due to the fact that he really wants to win the Daytona 500. And I think he did have one of the fastest cars he's ever had. And he had a really good car. I think he did have overall probably the fastest car in the race. I think he had the best car. But unfortunately, Brad Keselowski was way over aggressive. And what's really, really ironic about this is the fact that Brad Keselowski, for many years, really since around 2017, 2018, Brad Keselowski has been very, very critical of drivers for being super aggressive. So it's very hypocritical, the fact that Brad Keselowski was really, really doing this, considering the fact that he was a person around a culprit, and considering the fact that he was super, super aggressive in this race. In my opinion, I don't think Brad Keselowski is going to be like that all the time. I think that he's just trying to have a lot of good runs. He probably will talk to these people and apologize to them, but at the same time, he was way aggressive. And I think he was a little bit too aggressive, in my opinion, the fact that he was like that. But it is what it is, and I think Brad Keselowski will be able to hopefully not be as aggressive when we go to other races. And I think he's put a target on his back, though, going into the future, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Garrett Smithley. As it was announced this morning that Garrett Smithley will drive the 15 for Ricker Racing in 2022 for all the West Coast swing races and other races in 2022 as well. Garrett Smithley has driven for multiple teams in the NASCAR Cup Series over the years, including driving many races for Ricker Racing, and also has had a lot of experience in the past with JD Motorsports as well. Now, Garrett Smithley, of course, like I mentioned, quite a bit of experience in the Cup Series, but I'll be honest with you, Garrett Smithley has not had overall the best performances, but I do think at the same time, for Garrett Smithley's sake, I do think that a lot of it has been affected by the fact that their cars have not overall been the fastest in the past. And I do think this year that Ricker Racing is going to be a much faster organization when it comes to their pace and when it does come to their speed. So I do hope that Garrett Smithley can do well. Now, what are my expectations for Garrett Smithley this year? I think that Garrett Smithley is going to have decent runs this year. I think Ricker Racing is going to be a better team. So overall, I think that Garrett Smithley does have some shots for some top 15s and some top 20s maybe this year. Maybe, I don't, that's a little over expectations. Maybe some top 25s, some top 30s. I think that'd be really, really good runs for them. I do hope they do that good because I think it'd be great. And hopefully we will see Garrett Smithley have a good job in the car. Hope he does well. I think it'd be awesome. And hope we get to see Garrett Smithley have a really strong run here at Auto Club in the rest of the races this year that he runs. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Maya Sauter. Now, Maya Sauter was being interviewed after the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, and he says that his think his left leg evaluated with plans to race this week at Auto Club Speedway. For those who watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, Maya Sauter was involved in a very, very horrendous crash on the last lap at Daytona International Speedway. Maya Sauter was basically lifted up off of the ground, and I think the front hit basically the catch fence and destroyed the catch fence, and the engine came out, and the engine, of course, went into Denny Hamlin's, it basically went into Denny Hamlin's bus, and a ton of suspension parts and pieces came apart. One of the scariest accidents I've seen. I think the most scariest definitely since Ryan Newman's horrendous accident at Daytona in 2020 when Ryan Newman was involved in a very, very dangerous and horrendous accident. Ryan Sauter's wreck was absolutely really, really bad. One of the worst I think I have ever seen. Luckily, though, for Maya Sauter, he actually did get out of the car. He hobbled a little bit. He did get out of the car. The fact that Maya Sauter was able to walk away from that accident, I think, shows the safety that NASCAR has done for the last 20 years. Look how safe the sport has been, especially over the last 20 plus years. No one has died from NASCAR, but that does not mean that NASCAR can continue to innovate. NASCAR, in my opinion, will continue to innovate, and it will continue to work on ways to make the sport much, much safer. So I'm really happy to see that Maya Sauter was okay and wasn't seriously hurt, and I'm glad to see that he was all right. In my opinion, I'm glad to see he was okay, and the fact that he was, again, able to walk away from that wreck, I think is absolutely insane and absolutely crazy, and in my opinion, I'm very happy to see that Maya Sauter was able to walk away from that horrendous wreck, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jeff Gordon. As Jeff Gordon Davis said that Jeff Gordon is going to be in the Fox Sports booth later this year in 2022. Now, there are a couple other people to talk about in regards to the Fox Sports booth here in just a little bit. But Jeff Gordon, of course, was talking during Daytona 500, and they were saying he'll be in the booth later this year. Race has not been announced at this time for Jeff Gordon, but he will be in the Fox Sports booth at some point later this year. I'm very intrigued to see what race Jeff Gordon is going to commentate. Now, in my honest opinion, I don't think Jeff Gordon is going to do a good job. Jeff Gordon, in my opinion, was not really good when it came to being a commentator. He really hasn't done a good job when it comes to that commentary side of things over the years. And that's why he left the Fox Sports booth. And I think a lot of it, he's gone now and worked with Hendrick Motorsports. And I think he's done a really good job working at Hendrick Motorsports. He's helping him really start the year off well. And I think Jeff Gordon does have a shot to have a good year in the Fox Sports booth. But I'm not honestly sure he's going to do a very, very good job in the Fox Sports booth when he gets back in. He really does not have that energy. And I don't think he'll do a really good job in the Fox Sports booth. So hopefully he does really, really well. But to be honest with you, my expectations for Jeff Gordon are very, very low, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tony Stewart. As Tony Stewart is going to return to the Fox Sports booth at Circuit of the Americas. Now, this one gets me really, really hyped up and really, really excited. Tony Stewart, in my opinion, he's commentated the Busch Light Clash and has commentated the Daytona 500. And one of the few things that I think that's been done right with Fox, because Fox has had horrendous coverage to start this year, one of the few things that I think has been going really well for Fox Sports is Tony Stewart being in there. Tony Stewart, in my opinion, has done not only an amazing job, but an incredible job at the same time as well when it comes to commentary. Not only is Tony Stewart very, very witty and can be funny, but he also can lead that into a really, really good conversation. And that's one thing the Fox Sports booth has been lacking is someone that can be really, really good, but also can be a really, really good analyst. And in my opinion, the fact that they are bringing back shows that a lot of people are really, really happy to see Tony Stewart in there. And again, of course, Tony Stewart is also focusing on the NHRA, which is why he can't be in there on a full-time basis. I wish he wasn't there full-time, but I understand what Fox is doing. And I think that's one thing that I think Fox has gotten right compared to a lot of the other things that they've done. They have not been able to do right. I think one of the more positive things that they've done is they've had a really good booth so far. So I'm very happy to see that Tony Stewart is coming back to the Fox Sports booth, again, at Circuit Americas. I think he's going to do a good job. He's going to keep Clint Boyer in check. I think he's also going to be able to help the booth continue to bring it together as well. So I'm very, very happy to see this, and I think Tony Stewart, once again, will do a very, very great job in the booth, and I'm glad to see that he'll be in the Fox Sports booth as well, once again, as Circuit of the Americas. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Danica Patrick. As it was announced during the Fox Sports broadcast for the Daytona 500 that Danica Patrick is going to join the Fox Sports booth at Las Vegas and Phoenix. Now, Danica Patrick, of course, is a former NASCAR Cup Series driver who drove in the Cup Series from part-time 2012 all the way up to the end of 2017. It did make a one-off start in the Cup Series for the Daytona 500 2018 for Premium Motorsports, and then drove in the Indy 500 for Ed Carpenter Racing. Now, Danica Patrick, she wasn't overall the best NASCAR driver. She had a pretty good career in IndyCar where she did pick up a victory. Now, Danica Patrick has done some commentary in the past for NASCAR when she did that Pocono coverage, I think, in 2016. And I'll be honest, it wasn't the best coverage. But I did listen to her in the SRX, and I will say that she actually did not do a bad job when it came to the SRX coverage. I do think that Dario Franchitti and James Hinchcliffe did better when it came to her coverage. But Danica Patrick was really not that half bad. And I think that she can bring a lot of insight over. Again, she's not been in the sport for the last couple of years, and she's going to have a lot of high pressure to really stand up to the levels of whatever Matt Kenseth does and Tony Stewart does. Because remember, Matt Kenseth, of course, is going to be the Fox Sports booth this weekend at Auto Club. But I think that Danica Patrick hopefully can do very, very well. And again, I'm glad to see at least she's back in NASCAR in some sort of capacity. I know that we criticize her a lot for how bad of a racer she was, but she did bring a lot of people into the sport. And I think she helped brought a lot of people in. So I'm glad to see Danica Patrick's in the Fox Sports booth. I'm intrigued to see how she's going to do because, again, she's going to have a lot of pressure on her to perform very, very well in a very big, high-pressure situation. But in my honest opinion, I'm very happy to see that Danica Patrick is back, is going to be in the Fox Sports booth. I think she actually did a pretty good job in SRX. And, again, I hope she does really, really well because, again, she's going to be in a high-pressure situation to do really, really well, to be up on the levels that Tony Stewart has been in. But I think that she can do it. But, again, she needs to be – hopefully she can be serious, but also going to be in some jokes as well and make the sport a little bit entertaining, at least make Fox Sports better than what they've been. Because I think Fox has a lot of issues they need to fix. And in my opinion, hopefully Danica Patrick can come in here and do a good job when it comes to that. So I do hope that Danica can do a really, really good job because she's going to have a lot of pressure on her. So I do hope that Danica could come in here and do a really, really good job, to be honest with you. Now we're going to jump on to the first of three major stories in today's episode, as we are talking about Andretti Global. Now, this came out of nowhere when it comes to Formula One, but it was announced on Friday that Michael Andretti has submitted an application to the FIA to field his own F1 team called Andretti Global. This was first reported by Mario Andretti. Then basically Jennifer reported the team confirmed that they had applied for application and they are looking to potentially race in 2024 in Formula One. Also, it was reported eventually later that they would build cars in Indianapolis with a home base in England, and they already currently have an engine deal that is in place for the team. This is a massive, massive, and huge story. I think of all motorsport stories, this is definitely the biggest story probably released. And this is, of course, released by Mario Andretti trying to play politics. Now, again, they still have to get through the approval process from the FIA, which they should be able to hopefully get through the approval process. So I think you want Andretti on your field, considering that Mario Andretti, 1978 champion. We already talked about this on the channel, that Michael Andretti had actually been trying to buy into Sauber F1, the Alfa Romeo organization, and they were going to put $250 million with their company. But then Sauber or Alfa Romeo basically realized that they had enough money as well. And they talked about they were going to have Colton Herta and Valtteri Bottas on the team. But basically, Colton Herta was actually going to be the driver, and Kyle Kirkwood was going to get into the team as well. But like I've mentioned, this is a massive, massive, and huge story. The first question I have is, what engine package are they going to run? To me, I think it's very, very obvious, and we know which one. I think it's going to be Honda. Honda has been very, very fast. They just won the Formula One championship, and they extended their deal with F1, I think, up to 2025 or 2026, if I'm not mistaken. And remember, Andretti is going to be jumping in 2024 as well, so they'll have a couple of years to jump in there. So most likely going to be Honda. But let's jump into something else before talking about drivers and they could be in there. I think Andretti's playing it very, very smart by now, just jumping into Formula One right away and taking a few years to develop. Because, again, they do have the money, because, remember, you need $200 million to be able to enter an F1 car, which they do have the $200 million that they're going to need to get into Formula One. In my honest opinion, that's pretty awesome move. They've got the money as well and the investment of resources to be able to get into there as well. The other big question is, what drivers do I think are going to be entered? The first one, and this is obvious, is Colton Herta. Colton Herta was originally going to go to Alfa Romeo in 2022 to race in Formula One, but Colton Herta is going to go to Formula One in 2024. I think that is going to be, because I think you're going to choose American drivers to get in there. Colton Herta has had ambitions to go into Formula One, but he wants to be in a very competitive car. And if Andretti's building their own stuff and building their own team, that will be really, really good. And it will show that Colton Herta will have big potential. And I think Colton Herta, again, he's had ambitions of going to Formula One. So I think that they will potentially put him, and I think that he will be one of the drivers for sure. The end, you have the other driver, which is kind of a toss-up between two drivers right now. One of those, of course, is Logan Sargent. Now, the reason I'm not saying 100% Logan Sargent is Logan Sargent, of course, is a driver that is in the Formula One pipeline right now, but he's a development driver for Williams. Now, that being said, Williams right now does not have enough space to put him in their program right now. They've got Alex Albon driving for the team, and they've got Nicholas Latifi. And I think that Alex Albon and Nicholas Latifi are going to remain in there. Now, if we see one of those drivers end up leaving after 2022 to go to another organization in Formula One in 2023, then we could see Logan Sargent. Remember, Logan Sargent is part of Williams' development program and is going in there. But if they don't have a place for him by 2024, maybe he could be one of the drivers. And I think Logan Sargent is a very, very talented driver, by the way, and he can do very, very well. The only other driver that I think that could be it is Kyle Kirkwood. Now, Kyle Kirkwood was originally going to drive for Andretti's organization this year when they were going to have them go over to F1, but unfortunately that fell through, so he's driving full-time for AJ Foyt Racing. But Kyle Kirkwood is a very, very high-profile driver who I think is going to surprise a lot of people and could surprise a lot of people and maybe win a race in IndyCar with AJ Foyt equipment. He will get the best out of that equipment this year and do extremely well. So I think that this is so cool, though. You've got Andretti jumping into Formula 1, if it does get approved, of course. You will have a team that I think could be very, very successful, and a team that also could falter. But we really don't know how the regulations are going to go, but I think he's playing his part by not just jumping straight into Formula 1 and focusing on trying to get their equipment up and ready to go. So I'm super excited about this, super pumped about this, and I'm glad to see that we're going to see an Andretti Formula 1 team potentially in 2024, excuse me. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott. As it was announced on Sunday that Chase Elliott is signed a 5-year contract extension with Hendrick Motorsports that will go through the 2027 season. This is a massive, massive contract, but I'll tell you this. I've known about this for a year. They've been working on a massive, massive deal for Chase Elliott that was going to go all the way through I thought he was going to go through 2028 or 2029, but they signed a massive, massive deal with Chase Elliott. It does not shock me. They said earlier last week during media day that they have worked on deals and their deals were very, very intimate. Talking about William Byron, Chase Elliott, and Jeff Gordon had to let a little bit of smile come out, basically thinking, hey, we know at this point that there's a deal's coming here very, very soon. But to also have this announced on the Daytona 500 day is really, really good. And you look at the stats of Chase Elliott as well. Chase Elliott, of course, a 13-time Cup Series winner, including winning the championship in 2020. And very rarely when a driver wins a championship for Rick Hendrick, they really ever go away. And I think that Hendrick Motorsports really wants to keep the core lineup. Now, talking about William Byron is also probably going to have his contract extension announced very, very shortly as well. And he's probably going to get at least a 5 or 6 year deal as well. So he's going to be with the team. And they also, of course, want to keep Kyle Larson in the organization. And Alex Bowman's the one that I'm a little bit hesitant about. But I think they also want to keep Alex Bowman in the organization as well, considering this team has had success. Now, looking at Chase Elliott is only 25 or 26 years old and has already had as much success as he's had. So I think that Chase Elliott could, in the future, potentially have a major, major breakout seasons, and not major breakout seasons, but major, major years. And I think as he gets older, he's going to only get better. And the fact, like I said, he's got 13 wins at only the age of 25 or 26 years old is a major thumbs up to me. He's been very successful in the Cup Series already. One of the few drivers under the age of 30 that has had as much success. Of course, he's still looking to win the Daytona 500, some of the major crown jewel events that he's not won yet. But Chase Elliott's done already a lot so far in his young career, and he absolutely deserves to come back to Hendrick Motorsports. And Hendrick Motorsports right now is setting themselves up for a really, really great future. They're looking to jump into other motorsports right now. They're looking to potentially have Kyle Larson run if they run an IndyCar team. Maybe looking to have Kyle Larson drive for that organization or support an organization like Penske and work with them on that. They have also, of course, working an IMSA program, and they've got sponsorship extensions going through 2027, 2028. Hendrick Motorsports right now is setting themselves up for a great future, and a lot of that, of course, is help from Jeff Gordon, who drives for their Deuce Drive, but of course is the owner of one of the co-owners of the organization. So I think that Chase Elliott is someone who is going to be extremely successful over the years, and I think, like I said, having Chase Elliott come back to the team for long term, I think is a major standout, and this guy absolutely deserves his contract. It's been expected that he was going to get this long of a contract, but I think the fact that this is setting in that he has a massive contract with Hendrick Motorsports going through 2027, I think is a major thumbs up in my honest opinion, and I'm very, very happy to see Chase Elliott's coming back. He absolutely deserves it. Expectations of 2022 in the future, he's going to win a championship by the time his contract comes up. I think he'll be one of the few drivers that has multiple championships, and I think Hendrick Motorsports will be a team that will win most of the championships over the next 5 to 6 years. So I'm overall very, very happy to see this, and I'm very, very happy that Chase Elliott got a massive, massive extension. He absolutely deserves it, and again, I think he will do very, very well with Hendrick Motorsports going into the future. So overall, very, very happy to see this, and I really think that Chase Elliott will continue to be the future Hendrick Motorsports, along with Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Alex Bowman as well. And like I've said in here, I think that they will get a massive, they will continue to extend these drivers. And again, I think we'll talk about Kyle Larson, William Byron. William Byron, I think, like I said, will get a contract extension to 2026, 2027. And I think that we'll see Kyle Larson get an extension probably for another 5 or 6 years as well here. Because I think they're going to keep Larson forever. They're going to keep all these drivers for a long time. And I'm very, very happy to see that they've gone ahead and extended Chase Elliott to 2027. And now we're going to go ahead and jump onto the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Team Penske and RFK. This is one of the biggest NASCAR stories of the weekend. So if you've not been really following this story, NASCAR on Friday took possession of wheels from Team Penske and RFK Racing. The confiscated parts for the further inspection, any penalties to come at a later date. Brian Keselowski then responded to this situation in the afternoon, and he says it is a safety related and it was not a performance enhancement issue. Then Roger Penske last night said that on Sunday night, I should say, says that they talked to NASCAR a week ago about this and basically informed that they were making some safety changes. Now, for those of you who do not know, in the NASCAR rulebook, you are not supposed to touch any parts of these cars. They did say, basically what they did was, they basically enlarged the sides, I think they shrink the sides of the pinholes, take a little bit weight out of it for safety reasons, but they're not going to come out and basically say that they did it for performance enhancement reasons. And like I just said just a minute ago, even if it is a safety modification, you're not allowed to touch or modify any of these parts. And we could see some massive penalties coming. Now, these penalties are not expected to come today. They're expected to come at some point later this week. Scott Miller said they're going to talk to OEMs and talking to vendors and decide what penalties are going to come down. Now, here's my honest opinion on the situation. Like I said, you're not supposed to mess with the vendor in any of these parts on these cars as part of the NASCAR rules. And remember, NASCAR announced some massive penalties. And this potentially could be playoff bans coming for Team Penske and RFK. They potentially be getting some massive penalties. L3 penalties are 120 points, 180 points, and potentially could get playoff bans for all 5 of these drivers, potentially $250,000 to $500,000, and potentially multiple crew chiefs suspended, and maybe suspensions for teams as well to not show up to races. Here's my opinion on what the penalties should be. I personally think that there need to be penalties assessed, considering you're not supposed to modify these cars and touch these cars. However, I don't think they need to be excessive to the point where they need playoff bans. I think they need to give them an L1 penalty from 20 to 60 points, which is still massive, and will lose a crew member and lose a ton of playoff points. But I personally do not believe that they need to give them L3 penalties for modifying these cars. I get why they would do it, and again, NASCAR has these rules. You're not supposed to touch these cars, but in my opinion, I personally think that they need only L1 penalties. And again, if they don't penalize him, I'm definitely going to be shocked. But NASCAR also needs it clearly in the rule book say what happens. And maybe NASCAR may give it a little more lenient toward them because there were a couple teams that did have issues when it came to rules. And maybe that was the thing that really helped. So I'm not sure what they're going to do, but I think the penalties don't need to be super excessive because I definitely will be angry if they get playoff bans. They do not need to be banned, but again, there are potentially major penalties coming, and we're going to know later this week on that. And again, you're not supposed to touch any of these parts. You can't touch any of the vendor parts that's in the NASCAR rule, and NASCAR has these rules and vendors selected, and they don't want these drivers touching them because you look at the size of the wheels, they took weight out of them for quicker pit stops. But he also said it was for safety measures and stuff. And again, Roger said it's true that they talked to NASCAR a week ago. At least he said they talked to NASCAR a week ago. Maybe we'll see Penske get less penalties than RFK. But again, there's going to be penalties addressed for this. Again, you're not supposed to mess with these parts. And they said that the most likely penalties are going to come here in the week or so. But this is definitely really crazy that they decided to do this. And again, they announced these penalties a few weeks ago, and the fact that we're not even out of this. But again, because it's a dual race and it's not a Daytona 500, they don't need excessive penalties. Take away maybe some points and stuff for messing with it, but at the same time, in my opinion, don't go ahead and make sure that do not basically ban it for the playoffs for basically a tire situation. So in my opinion, that's what it is, and hopefully we'll see some penalties come here in the future in the week. So, anyway, that's today's Law NASCAR Motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as for my page as well. Links description below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What penalties should be assessed RFK and Team Penske? Do you think they should be excessive, or do you think they should be a little tame? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Andretti Global and Chase Elliott returning to Hendrick Motorsports? Let me know in the comments below. I've got an intro to this video that's going to be dropping this Wednesday. Then I've got picks dropping on Thursday. And then we'll have another NASCAR news video most likely on Friday that you will see on the channel. So you guys should check that out. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. And I'll see you guys next time for some great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.